Hybrid Animals with Pip, Kristen, Angie, and Leo.
Instead of the birds and the bees, you get the all-new modernized version, the tigers and the lions. Hybrid animals are the offspring as a result of sexual reproduction from two genetically distinct individuals. In common terms, they are a mix of animals that are genetically similar enough to breed, but not enough to be classified as the same type of animal. Genetic hybrids also carry two different alleles of the same gene. Intraspecific hybrids are a subspecies within a distinct species of animal. For example, the Bengal and the Siberian are both tigers, but they're distinct enough to classify as slightly different animals. Another good example would be how a Chihuahua and a Rottweiler are both dogs, but still have very obvious differences. Interspecific hybrids are different species within the same genus. These are what most people think of when they hear about hybrid animals. Some examples are the Zoe, a yak and domestic cow offspring, a growler, a grizzly and polar bear combo, the coy wolf, a coyote and wolf offspring, and a liger, a lion and tiger mix.
Nomenclature of a hybrid animal. So how are these things named? Hybrids, with a few exceptions, are usually named directly after their parent species. So you have a dad here who is a jaguar, and the mom who is a lion, and you get a jaglion. The first half of the name always comes from the father species, and the second half always comes from the mother. Let's test your knowledge. If you take a male lion and cross it with a female tiger, what would the child species be called? If you said liger, you would be correct.
Yay!
What about if you take a male tiger and a female lioness? What would their child species be called? That's correct, a tigon.
Yay!
These two big cats, obviously familiar with one another, happily engage in play. Although they are part of the same family, the two are unlikely to have these types of interactions in the wild. They have different habitats and different behaviors. Lions are social animals who live with multiple other animals in a pride, while tigers are usually solitary and like to keep to themselves. Both inter- and intraspecific hybrids can be a result of human intervention. And although hybrids seem like a rare thing that doesn't happen very often, we can actually see them quite often. Whether it's designer breeds like Yorkie Poo, which is a Yorkie and Poodle mix, Puggles, a Pug and a Beagle mix, or Golden Doodles, which is a Golden Retriever and Poodle mix, or an average mutt, they're all still technically intraspecific hybrids. But when you take the idea of domesticated hybrids and apply it to wild animals, the results oftentimes are not as pleasant.
These animals can be pretty cute, but they often have a plethora of health issues since the genetics of the parent animals oftentimes do not completely match up. A good example of this is that in big cats, oftentimes because hybrids usually show some form of heterosis, aka hybrid vigor, the mother has to have a cesarean. Other common problems in the cubs that do survive are neurological disorders, obesity, genetic defects, and a shortened lifespan. Many don't survive past the age of 7. Accredited zoos generally frown upon hybridizations since there isn't really a basis for them to exist, and because the animal is more likely to be a deterrent in conservation efforts.
Although non-domesticated hybrid animals are usually a result of human intervention, they can happen naturally as well. The only time that this does occur, though, is when normal reproductive options become very slim. Climate change and decreasing habitat ranges play a very large part in wild hybridization. The coy wolf and the pizzly are two such examples. In the upcoming years, scientists actually expect more Arctic hybrids as the ice caps continue to melt.
According to an article titled Pizzly Bears by Christine Clisette for Slate.com, she states, take horses and donkeys, which probably diverged about 2.4 million years ago. Horses have 64 chromosomes, while donkeys have 62, and when they mate, their chromosomes don't pair up properly, inhibiting meiosis in their offspring. As a result, mules are sterile. Brown bears and polar bears, by contrast, evolved from the same ancestor only about 150,000 years ago, a relatively brief period, and have not developed significant genetic differences. While most hybrids are sterile, some, the ones most likely to interact in the wild, can reproduce. The more recent their common ancestry is, the more likely it'll be that they can reproduce. Some hybrids, such as smaller wild animals, once released, will continue to breed with the wild population. These new hybridized animals can quickly take over, pushing the already established species out. They can either take over by means of competing for the same resources, such as prey or land, or they'll breed with the wild population and muddy their gene pool. This greatly affects the already fragile ecosystem. For example, this savanna cat, which is a mixture of a domestic cat and a serval, got its 5 minutes of fame for killing a well-known fox on Belmead Island. Africanized honeybees, or better known as killer bees, were produced when researchers tried to create a more productive and better adapted bee. It was originally a cross between a European honeybee and an African bee. Instead of the bee they wanted, what they got was a terror that was decidedly more aggressive. In California, there's a salamander hybrid made from the native California tiger salamander and the invasive barred tiger salamander. The barred tiger salamander is native to Texas and was brought into California in large numbers by California bait dealers about 60 years ago. The tiger salamander larvae are high up in the pond's food chain and ended up eating a lot of the other species. And the hybridized larvae had a greater effect on the newts and frogs than the native salamander did, nearly wiping both out. Even the native species themselves suffered from the addition of the hybrid species.